Dak Prescott is one of the biggest veteran losers coming out of the NFL draft. We'll explain why next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head over to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdziuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. And Kate, I'm fired up for today's show. I cannot wait. We're discussing some of the biggest veteran losers coming out of the 2025 NFL draft. And this feels a little bit like a Locked On Cowboys show because we got to talk about Dak
It
Prescott.
always does, man. It always does.
I'm mad. I'm mad for Dak.
Hashtag mad for Dak, and for good reason. Let's look at the depth chart, shall we, Marcus? Because we came into the 2025 draft thinking we were going to get Dak Prescott some weapons. We either thought, I don't know, maybe a running back, but hopefully they would have walked away with a, Teteroa McMillan. How hard is that, right? But the Panthers sniped him, and you know what Jerry Jones said? He said, screw it. He said, forget this. Forget wide receivers. I don't even want to draft a wide receiver anyway. She goes to another school. Like, that's the vibe Jerry Jones gave. And didn't draft a single wide receiver, didn't draft a single tight end. And that leaves Dak Prescott with CeeDee Lamb. Okay, check. Good. Jalen Tolbert, Kavonte Turpin, Ryan Flournoy.
These are real names, by the way.
Yeah. Jalen Moreno Cropper.
Yeah. Jalen Brooks.
Elvin Harmon. Who?
Yeah. It's depressing. It's depressing, Kate, because in 2023, Dak finished second in the MVP voting. I think he was the top 6 fantasy quarterback that year. 2021, the Cowboys had a second-year CeeDee Lamb. They had Amari Cooper. They had Michael Gallup. And, of course, Dak Prescott put up huge numbers. So whenever Dak has had a viable receiving core around him, he's put up massive fantasy numbers. And from a dynasty perspective, we're not valuing him as a top 12, top 13 quarterback anymore. But man, it's getting to the point now where it's CeeDee Lamb and nothing else. It's really hard to trust him, even as a mid-range QB2, because we saw this last year. Like, teams are just going to take away CeeDee Lamb and dare the Cowboys to throw the ball to one of the made-up names that you mentioned. And it's not going to be all that successful. So from Dak, we thought Dak could potentially get a Matthew Golden or a Teteroa McMillan to be the wide receiver 2 during the draft. They didn't draft anybody. And now they go into the season with arguably the worst 2 through 6 in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment of just how bad this receiving core is. Now, in all fairness, he does still have Jake Ferguson. So we want to talk about the 2023 campaign. CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson combined for 283 targets. Like, I expect a similar structure, but the biggest problem is not like that top 2 in terms of target share, because I think we all know that that's how the targets are going to break down. Mm-hmm. It's the depth behind, and it's that depth that's lost. Even Tony Pollard, who, obviously is a running back, has a lot of experience as a slot receiver coming out of college. He ranked 4th on the team in targets in 2021, 67 targets. And I just don't think looking at the weaponry, I don't think they have the chops here in the receiving game, at least, just yet. There's a lot missing in terms of that depth that, like, all right, so let's say opposing defenses key in on CeeDee Lamb, key in on Jake Ferguson. Where does that leave Dak? Because he's coming off a serious hamstring injury. He's had he's had a number of injuries. And if we're not going to get him help, if we're not going to have that rushing upside, what does that mean for Dak Prescott, the fantasy asset? It's probably not great.
No, and I think now that we're looking at some quarterbacks in the range of so latest batch of Dynasty ADP, Dak Prescott QB 17. Some quarterbacks are going behind him: Cam Ward, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Michael Penix. I would just rather have all those guys right now than Dak.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair assessment at this point in where we're at for Dak Prescott. Cam Ward, I think, is like an interesting one because, again, you even look at, we don't know Cam Ward, the professional NFL quarterback, yet. We don't necessarily.
Well, let me ask you: would you trade in a superflex league? Would you trade Dak Prescott for pick 102? Because I wouldn't heartbeat.
I mean, at that point, it's exactly what the trade is.
It's Cam Ward. Yeah,
it's Cam Ward.
Just be Cam Ward.
I mean, I think probably fair, just from a yeah.
You're getting younger, more rushing upside. I know the receiving core is obviously not great in Tennessee either, but you're just getting significantly younger. Dak has had multiple big injuries over the last couple of years, and you're getting 10 years younger.
Question for you. What do you view as Dak Prescott's? Maybe this is like the thing for me. Because obviously Cam Ward, number 1 overall pick. I'm sure he's going to get plenty of chances in the NFL, even if it didn't work out in Tennessee, blah, blah, blah. What is Dak's, how secure should Dak feel in this Dallas Cowboys offense? Because I feel like, I don't know, maybe there's sometimes been kind of a breakdown in terms of like the fan level of commitment to Dak Prescott versus the organization. What's the temperature check on the Dallas Cowboys and their feelings about Dak Prescott as their franchise guy?
I think Cowboy fans have come to the realization that Dak needs a lot of help in order to get the Cowboys where they want to go. And that's okay. I think Jalen Hurts needs a lot of help and he just won a Super Bowl, but he's not the he's not Trevor. He's not the Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes type of quarterback that's going to elevate the team to go up to another level. But I think he's a good enough quarterback to get them into the playoffs and hopefully win a couple rounds. But as for the Cowboys' actual commitment to Dak, he's probably the most secure non-top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now. Because, Kate, we are going into year 1 of his new contract extension, which is almost fully guaranteed for the next 4 years. If the Cowboys were to release him after the 2026 season, so that's 2 more years from now, they would have over $56 million in dead money. That's 2 years from now. Dak is going to be a Dallas Cowboys starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. The only thing that I struggle with is the injuries. Now, we had 2020 missed most of the season with a foot injury. 2021, he had a calf injury. 2022, he had a shoulder injury and then a thumb injury. And then 2024, he has the torn hamstring, which he had to have surgery on. We're just getting to the point where he's very beat up going into his age 32 season. And I think we have to start thinking hey, he's probably not going to be a quarterback that's going to be available every single week.
I think that's fair. But would it be a fair assessment to say, because I do think having that level of security in terms of the contract situation is, I think, valuable, right?
Of course.
Having that kind of, I don't know, just leeway in terms of your support from the organization. The fact that, I mean, look at the Browns, right? They were kind of handicapped and just tied to this situation with Deshaun Watson, and Deshaun Watson got far more chances than he ever should have had. So how do we value, I think that's maybe an interesting dynasty question in general, is even if you don't enjoy maybe the upside factor, and I don't know that we're going to enjoy the upside for Dak Prescott, but he's locked and loaded as the starter. Because I'm looking behind him, Trevor Lawrence, okay, locked and loaded as the starter. But behind Dak Prescott, you look at the field of players like
Bryce Young, who's been benched.
Bryce Young, Trevor Lawrence, again, throw him out. Jared Goff, okay, we could probably throw him out as well. But there's not a ton of players on sort of safe ground. I think Dak Prescott's probably the lowest valued player that has the kind of security that Dak Prescott has.
He's like the only quarterback from that range on that there's no chance he gets benched at any point, right? Now he might miss games because of injury, but we've literally seen Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson benched. Tua's got his own injury concerns. Justin Fields was benched for a washed up Russell Wilson last year. Sam Darnold's been benched before. So Geno Smith has been benched before. And he's going into his age 35 season. So you're right. Like, there is some stability there with knowing that he's going to be the Dallas Cowboys starting quarterback, but the upside just isn't there until they get better weapons around him.
Is this a potential buy low kind of opportunity for somebody who needs a QB2?
I don't think so, because I think there's too much risk. The Cowboys aren't going to solve their wide receiver 2 need over the offseason, and I've got my doubts they're going to be able to solve it in the near future. So I would not be buying right now.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about some other players that lost value over the weekend. We'll get to Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it easy and fast to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. There are so many reasons why I love Gametime, but one of my favorites is the all-in pricing, which means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We're discussing players that lost value over the NFL draft weekend. And Kate, let's talk about those Jacksonville running backs, because they did not select a running back at 5, which a lot of people thought they were going to do with Ashton Genty. They traded up to 2 to go get Travis Hunter. But they did use their first pick in the 4th round, a very, very high pick on Byshell Tootin, a running back from Virginia Tech, who James Gladstone, the Jaguars GM, said they've been targeting kind of throughout the draft process. This is somebody with a lot of speed. And I wonder, with a new head coach, a new front office, if we don't see Tootin on the field sooner rather than later.
I definitely think Tootin's going to find his way to the field. And I mean, now it's just kind of very muddy waters. And at least for 2025, you have to be concerned that none of these running backs is going to actually return any sort of value, especially Travis Etienne, who, again, they picked up the 5th-year option last year. I don't foresee a universe where he ever returns, right? Like,
no.
There's no way. And I think that I usually love to kind of handcuff myself to these running backs who have that first round draft capital, because they maybe will get some more chances. But Travis Etienne is, again, a guy who I think has had a lot of opportunities and has failed to really show any sort of level of efficiency. We've seen with Najee Harris, I think what the market looked like for Najee Harris, who was by far and away the top running back in this free agency class. The market was kind of barren, right? Like, the initial contract details came out. It was like worth up to $9 million. And you find out the base money is, anytime you see up to in
it's
a
always
contract
scary,
report,
right?
You know it's not good.
Yeah.
And that was what we got from Najee Harris. I do very much wonder if we're not going to see a similar situation for Travis Etienne here in the year to come, where he doesn't hold value for 2025, because they are going to be committed to getting Tootin on the field sooner rather than later. You have Tank Bigsby, who's coming off a breakout campaign. Travis Etienne's the biggest loser. Obviously, Tank Bigsby from a workload standpoint in 2025, there's a question. At least Tank Bigsby, though, and, Byshell Tootin, I think their skill sets are different enough.
I agree with that.
There could be a complementary aspect there, but Travis Etienne, throw him out the window.
Yeah, Travis Etienne, RB27 in the latest batch of Dynasty League Football ADP. No chance he's going there in a couple weeks. I also want to point out that the Jags drafted LaQuint Allen from Syracuse, where in round 7. Again, I know it's a late pick, but if you watched any of LaQuint Allen at Syracuse, I thought he was the best pass protecting running back in the class. He's also a fantastic receiver. He got 64 passes last year for Syracuse. He's somebody that can come in right away and give you that can help on passing downs, where I think Byshell Tootin needs a little bit of work there, and I don't think that's going to be his role. At this point, Kate, I fully expect Travis Etienne to be traded at some point this year, whether it's during training camp, once they realize that these other guys are just better, whether it's into the season, once some injuries happen. I just don't see any way that Travis Etienne is in Jacksonville on that cap number. And again, if he gets traded for a late day 3 pick, I'm not going to be any more interested. So RB27, massive loser. We should even mention, I think Tank Bigsby takes a hit as well. Not a massive one, less so than Travis Etienne, but I don't feel great about either of those guys going into the season.
Another massive, massive loser here in the running back category. Ramondre Stevenson, running back for the New England Patriots, who there was, I think, a little bit of hope that when healthy, when looking at the contract extension that he got, he, became one of the highest paid running backs in the league.
It was a little shocking when it happened too.
Yeah, it felt like it was kind of out of nowhere. And I mean, 4-year, $36 million contract, like that's a lot of money for a running back. And, they don't really have an out for him until at least 2027, but he's not going to be a free agent until his age 31 season, 2029. Like he's in the next year.
That.
It's like, yeah, for sure. And I do have to worry about, I think, just the future of Ramondre Stevenson when they make this very early investment in the running back. And I think, Ramondre Stevenson, I just don't think is talented enough to ward off carries at this point.
Nope. And I want to mention a guy that you mentioned, Najee Harris. Not like we were holding on to a lot of value for Najee Harris. However, Kate, he was RB21 in April ADP. So he was still being valued pretty high. Now that Omarion Hampton was drafted by the Chargers in round 1, I mean, it tanks his value. We think Najee's still going to play and serve a role for the Chargers, but the idea that he's going to be getting 16, 17, 18 touches a game, those hopes are just gone. He's back to being a committee player, a role player. And there's just not a lot of upside there.
And I also think that when you're looking at Najee Harris as a potential committee player, I don't think that's his game. I don't think
no.
Like his game is
volume,
being physical, having a voluminous workload where voluminous. I'm coming with some quick hitters here.
Yeah, there you go.
I think voluminous workload is the perfect way to say, like, yeah, he just wants to hit you, and he wants to hit you again and hit you again to the point where you're tired, right? And you don't want to deal with Najee Harris anymore. So maybe you give him a little more wiggle than you usually would have. That's Najee Harris's game. So I also have to worry that like that potential kind of usage for Najee Harris is also just not going to be good for his long-term value in terms of like navigating free agency next year.
We should also mention that the Chargers put the unrestricted free agent tag on J.K. Dobbins this week.
That was interesting.
Which basically gives them the right to keep him. I think that's like on a 1-year, $3 million deal if nobody else signs him.
Yeah.
And I don't see anybody else signing J.K. Dobbins. And we know he fits this offense. Again, I'm not so concerned about J.K. Dobbins, but I'm just more concerned that Najee Harris is never going to get enough touches where you even feel comfortable playing him as a flex. I think it's over.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about a tight end that just got absolutely demolished on draft weekend. Let's discuss Cole Kmet next. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports, College Football 25, or Call of Duty, my favorite game right now. You can do it as easily as you stream your favorite TV shows. Listen, there's a bunch of times where I've been on the road and I would love to have my Xbox with me, but the hassle of packing everything up and getting everything ready is just too much. But now it's easy. You can just plug in your Fire TV Stick 4K and you are ready to go as long as you have your paired controller. It's that easy. Head over to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino. They will get you ready for the NFL season. They're going to talk about all the latest roster moves, everything that's going on in the league right now. It's all available on YouTube or wherever you download your podcast. Find Locked On NFL Scouting. Go check out that show. They do a fantastic job over there. All right, Kate, let's talk about Cole Kmet. We didn't have a lot of hopes for Cole Kmet, the dynasty asset, because the production has been pretty mid over the last couple of years. Tight end 20 going into the month of April. However, there was a thought with Ben Johnson, with Caleb Williams in year 2, maybe things would turn around. But now with the selection of Colston Loveland, he's dust.
Yeah, I think, also we were looking at the Cole Kmet contract and the situation there. He was a former second round pick, 26 years old. That's usually when we start to see the tight end position break out a little bit, right? And then he gets this monster deal, 4 years, $50 million contract. Like, he looked like he would be a part of the Bears' plans long term. But as we've seen them accumulate draft capital, accumulate new resources, it's becoming more and more clear that I just don't think Cole Kmet is in the plans. And even if he is in the plans, even if they want to pay him his contract, and there is a potential out, like the most difficult times to move on were already past. Like, they can move on from him just under $5 million of dead cap. It's feasible. But when you're looking at Cole Kmet and a potential for volume, even if he's in the offense, even if he's still with the Chicago Bears, the pathway to volume is nil. It's non-existent. So,
and to be fair, I don't think the Bears are going to move on from him, because I think with Colston Loveland's shoulder injury, which we got to remember, this is why he did none of the pre-draft testing.
yeah.
The Bears probably feel like, hey, let's start Kmet as our every down tight end. He can do a lot of the blocking stuff. We'll ease Loveland in, and then we're having a conversation next off season about, hey, should the Bears cut Kmet, open up snaps for Loveland? I just don't see this getting better anytime soon.
No, and then it's not even just the Loveland factor, right? Also eating up targets over the middle of the field. It's going to be Luther Burden. We're going to get some work from DJ Moore moving around the formation. There are so many mouths to feed in this offense that, yeah, everybody took a bit of a hit, including DJ Moore. I'll also say, because again, you have these
Cowboys
guys,
receiver DJ Moore.
I mean, I would hope I wouldn't hate it. Like, I really wouldn't hate it at this point for both sides of the equation. But Cole Kmet just becomes kind of unpalatable in this situation. But I also do think that I think he's a talented tight end. I think he's a good receiver, a good enough receiver. Maybe in another offense, like, could you imagine if, like, again, I know maybe the Bears don't have the luxury to get this done right away, but like What if the Chargers traded for a Cole Kmet? I think that could be an interesting fit.
Yeah. I do think there's going to be teams that are interested in Cole Kmet because he is a good starting NFL tight end. I just don't know
if he's a well-rounded tight end.
He's just not that valuable in dynasty leagues, and any value that he had going into the draft is just completely gone. And I always get concerned about these tight ends that we're going into year 6 now, and we haven't really had one usable fantasy season. I have my concerns that going into year 7, it's suddenly going to get better. So this is Cole Kmet, one of the biggest losers, maybe the biggest loser coming out of the draft.
So you're not projecting a Jonnu Smith, age 29 breakout for Cole. All right, let's look at some players that are currently being taken around Cole Kmet here in Dynasty startup drafts. Let's start with Jonnu Smith, age 29, but Jonnu, okay. Jake Ferguson.
Jakey.
Obviously. How about Dallas Goedert, another tight end? We're kind of 30 years old at this point, which I'm going to be honest, when did he turn 30? No idea.
I think he was older coming out. Yep.
But holy smokes, he's older, and his place in this Philly offense not secure. So
they're kind of Goddard, because at least there's nobody blocking him at the tight end position. Snaps. Yeah.
Okay. Pat Freiermuth. Mason Taylor.
Quite a bit easily. Mason Taylor.
20 years old. Hard to pass up on that. Kate Otten. Elijah Arroyo. Chigakonkwo.
Keep going. Let's see how far. Let's see how bad this keeps going.
Let's see how gross this can get. Harold Fannin. Is that it? Is that?
I love Harold Fannin, but I would go Kmet in this case.
Okay, I have one more, and this player is being drafted well behind Cole Kmet, but I think it's a name worth asking. Theo Johnson.
Kmet. I just think Kmet's a better player.
Okay.
I also don't trust Russell throwing him the football at all. I know it's going to be Jackson Dart probably in the long term, but I think this Giants organization is going to have a lot of change over the next 12 months between quarterbacks, play callers, head coaches, front office. I just would be worried. But we're talking about Cole Kmet being valued as like tight end 30 at this point, right, Kate? Or in that range.
Yeah.
And you just don't. We talk about like dynasty cloggers, roster cloggers. This is the definition
of roster clogger. Yes, I agree.
All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. On tomorrow's show, we're going to take a look at some dynasty sleepers coming out of the NFL draft. So make sure you tune in for that. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.